in the rhetoric of the West as the things that Saddam, being the nasty man he is, might use. In fact, they were the things which, unreported by the press, which either failed or did not try, or possibly even suppressed what it knew, did not make this report, and they were used by the Americans on the Iraqis and caused a part of that number, perhaps 100,000, perhaps much more than 100,000 killed.
Well, therefore, all right, that's a point, certainly, but to the matter of Kuwait, what were we to do? Were we going to leave, was the world at large to leave Iraq sitting on its gains in Kuwait?
First of all, it wasn't to do what it did. It was not to have waged a bloody and degrading and horrible war, the details of which we're beginning to learn, and which will make, I believe, public opinion, if it has any conscience, come round to the understanding that we got it horribly wrong. Secondly, there is such a thing as patience. Very bad, very evil as Saddam was, and I'd make the point to Sir Alfred that what he did in Iran, he did with the full enthusiastic backing of the people who then later invaded him. The American anxiety was in 1980 about the power of militant Islam, as it perhaps will be again in 1992. And Iraq, the ruler of Iraq, was raised from a grade 3 bandit to a grade 1 bandit with all the money that was rolled to him by the Americans and by the British. Largely, and well, by many people, because of the panic terror of what the Imam Ayatollah Khomeini might do, and his successors. So we have this man there. He is a great local, provincial threat, but a very containable threat. Saudi Arabia was protectable with, what, a fifth of the forces we actually used for attack, for purely defensive purposes. The general will correct me, but you need fewer troops to defend than you do to attack. We could have made Saudi Arabia very secure. We could have had the sitzfleisch and the courage, and I really do mean the courage that goes with patience, to sit that one out. Very bad and very evil as the things he did in Kuwait were. They were not as bad as the things we did to conscript Iraqi soldiers, and which, had we followed that more patient policy, we would not have done.
Sheila Roberts, a bloody and degrading war?
Well, every war is bloody and in some degrees degrading. In peacetime, and if we had no aggression, we would all be pacifists, but some of us have learned that aggressors cannot be pacified, that they have to be dealt with. Now, I just heard it said that Iraq could have been containable. Demonstrably, Iraq was not containable.
Sorry, demonstrably? Would you demonstrate for us?
Well, because Iraq invaded Kuwait.
I said, but defended Saudi Arabia could be protected. There were no troops. There were no troops in Kuwait to protect Kuwait.
That's an assumption.
There were no troops in Kuwait to protect it from Iraq. There could very quickly have been and were troops in Saudi to protect it from Iraq.
Well, that's an assumption, which might have been.
Hang on, Dame Sheila, please, logic. We managed to put the troops in to fight the war. A fortiori, we could have put in the smaller number of troops to defend Saudi Arabia. How do you argue against that?
Well, what about Kuwait?
We didn't have any troops in Kuwait.
No, of course we didn't. And
that's a point I'm making.
Saddam Hussein's troops would have stayed in Kuwait if all that we had done was
you were
put
originally
in a
trying
small
to
number
argue.
of troops
just a minute,
to defend Saudi Arabia. There's such an unreal argument that's being put forward. It totally ignores the fact
Sheila,
that Iraq had already invaded Kuwait, had occupied Kuwait, and we have heard since of some terrible atrocities. Talk about bloody and degrading wars. The atrocities which were perpetrated upon the citizens of Kuwait don't bear repetition. So it's so completely unreal. Where was Saddam Hussein to be stopped? And what is the objection to using a massive degree of armed forces if that brought the war to a conclusion very much more quickly and mercifully, with very few casualties on the side of the alliance, which hasn't been mentioned, of course. The talk is all about weeping and wailing for Iraq, the aggressor.
Dame Sheila, can I get it, please, for you to understand that peasant boys put into uniform by a dictator matter when they are dead as much as any white man on our side? What is this amnesia on your part that you cannot emotionally take on board the fact that there has been a slaughter of a minimum of 100,000 peasant kids?
Yes, there was terrible rape in Kuwait as well.
So that makes it all right, does it?
doesn't make it all right. It had to be stopped.
But what do you mean by coming to us with vapid slogans like, well, war is terrible, but...
Well, Ed, just a minute, just running off the rails a bit there, slight danger of being rude to one another. 100,000, first of all, is that anything like right? I've not seen figures of that sort, I must say.
Oh, yes,
30,000?
No.
Awful figures, but...
It's 100,000 at the very least, even attested by a number of
Saudi
authorities. Is that
Arabia.
right?
Saudi Arabia said 100,000.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
That would be the minimum.
And we can certainly assume that it's going to be, prove to be very much more. And indeed, it seems to me the question of atrocities, anyway, the question of atrocities is very interesting. There are our atrocities and their atrocities, and I absolutely agree with Edward Pearce that our atrocities are our atrocities. It's things if we choose to define them as something which was done which is unjust, unfair, unnecessary, therefore they're atrocities. It's not the rules of war. You know, I think someone on not this program but another the other night I heard say, I think it's all right to shoot these retreating soldiers in the back, as it were, which means to bomb them to pieces by means of a napalm. The bomb you're talking about, and the other one that goes off and goes in all directions, was within the rules of international war, he said. Well, I find this a disgusting assertion, and I'm absolutely of the view of Mr. Pearce.
Professor Archmake, I'll come to you. I want a little bit later to discuss what you and I have talked about before on the results of that, which is the reaction of